Giselle's here with us. She's gonna host a dinner in your honor when you come. We're planning to have a chef. Oh, that's okay, James.
I was gonna say hi. Yeah. You stay there.
Yeah, you stay
I'll
there.
say hi.
Yeah.
Hi,
Hello.
nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
We're planning something so
I'm not gonna
spectacular.
what are you planning?
Something amazingly spectacular.
Ooh, I like amazingly spectacular.
Yeah, just be surprised, okay?
Okay, I will be, I'm sure. So where are you guys right now? Are you your place, Robert?
Yeah, we're in my studio.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, hopefully I'm going to be out there pretty soon. It's looking like.
I think so. Let me
caved into all the pressure Robert's been putting me putting.
It's pointless to resist, but there's a lot behind all that. That's all of us here. It's like we really want you here.
How do you like the new flyer? I'm doing some adjustments, but this is the new flyer for April.
Oh wow, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. But right over there on the shelf, I've got all of my curricula, and we, we have a whole new set of these wonderful things that we're making now.
Oh. Nice.
So
whoa.
all the students will get one of these handmade compasses that I developed because I could not find anything on the market that was suitable, because the idea of the compass is that you can very quickly and easily, you see, a whole variety of different drawing implements.
Nice.
So it's fun. I'm looking forward to it because I've been missing it.
Aw.
Awesome.
So yeah, I usually start simple and then we proceed into a whole variety of diagrams and patterns and so forth, and then we relate those to all kinds of things, from art to architecture to things in the natural world to molecular geometry, and see how there's a geometry that links all of these things together, a common geometry, and it was used throughout history all over the world by various societies, various civilizations, from the Egyptians to the Etruscans to the Chinese to the megalithic builders in England to the monumental earthwork builders in the eastern woodlands of North America to the Puebloan cultures of Southwest to the Mayans. The list goes on. And what I try to show is that if we take, for example, the monumental earthwork architecture of the eastern woodlands, and we look at the megalithic structures of England, and then we look at the Egyptian temples or even the Greek temples or Vedic temples, we can see that their outward forms are very diverse, multiplicity of different forms and looks, but underlying them all is a common template. And the key to that is the geometry. That's where I go with it. And then I bring in the idea of time cycles. And I show how these things right here, like these, I use a lot of models, and we're actually now producing these kinds of things for sale over the new HowTube website. But so we look at a lot of these models. This, of course, also a buckyball, the carbon 60 that forms similar to this. It's actually more of a soccer ball, but so I bring these models and I show, for example, that, here's a dodecahedron, 12 faces. Each one is pentagonal. Each angle is the magic number, 108 degrees. So you get 540 for each face. And since there's 12 faces, you have 12 times 540, which is 6,480, which is the traditional length of a season of the great year, which was considered to be the cosmic cycle. And then what's interesting is when you look at that and you use that as a template for looking at for developing your time cycles, you find things like, well, 2 seasons of the great year, which is 6,480 times 2, which is 12,960, is almost precisely the date of the most significant turning point in this planet's history in the last 3 million years, which was the Younger Dryas boundary, which is basically the veil that separates the modern incarnation of civilization from whatever happened in the 150 to 200,000 years of human history that got lost at that boundary. So I tie the geometry in with space, and that's what you picked up on in the flyer. So it's space and time. So I showed that the numbers are the link. So 6,480 years, 12,960, 25,920. And then I show how those numbers are embedded in the Vedas, how they're embedded in architecture, and how they were embedded in symbology and so on. So that's what we'll get into. And then people will be doing a lot of drawing to see how, for example, we start with a 2-dimensional figure on paper, then from the 2-dimension, they'll fold up into the 3rd dimension and create these kinds of forms here. So we go back, we pull on things like, the mood that I try to invoke is the sense of what it might have been like to participate in Plato's Academy or in a lodge of the Pythagoreans, the kinds of things that you would have been doing, So, Pythagoras said, it had written over the entrance to his academy was, "Let none enter here who are ignorant of geometry," because he felt that was the basic, that was the basic science that linked everything.
So, and also there's a little flavor of Leonardo da Vinci and all that too.
Oh, absolutely. And his famous Vitruvian Man is actually a squaring of the circle exercise, which is one of the fundamental exercises throughout the whole realm of sacred geometry, the reconciliation of these opposing forces. You have, the square representing the finite, and you have the circle representing the infinite. And so the squaring of the circle is the linking of the finite with the infinite. And there's a lot of other associated symbolism, but that's the idea is the reconciliation of opposites. And you cannot, in geometry, it is not possible to absolutely and perfectly square the circle. You can only use various methods to approximate it. You can only, but what I show is that the solution to that problem, to a high degree of accuracy, is embedded in the sacred numbers, that have come down to us mainly through architecture. And that's where a lot of the ancient wisdom has been preserved in the form of architecture.
Okay.
So all of these ancient structures are like, part of the textbook of this ancient knowledge. So like I'll show, for example, how the Parthenon perfectly manifests its unique position on the surface of the earth. And how units of measurement were derived from the actual position on the earth where the temple or the structure is being built. And it really raises some interesting questions about who knew what and when, and, that kind of thing. So it ought to be fun.
So fun.
Yeah, really looking forward to it.
So fun.
And, then Robert's I haven't had a chance yet to look, Robert, but Robert is tracking down the equipment and the things we're going to need. So we do a lot of coloring. It's kind of like being in kindergarten and doing a lot of coloring.
Fun.
So yeah, I try to make it fun. And so yeah, this will be the first one I've done, I think in 7 or 8 years. I also put together a curriculum for homeschool kids that were being homeschooled back in the mid 90s. And I used sacred geometry to teach geometry to about 120 kids over 15 years.
Wow.
And yeah, I discovered something that, when kids love the hands-on stuff. And, it's a good way to teach geometry is link geometry and art and have them drawing. And and then you're incorporating the hand, the eye, and the brain all in one process, and then you gently introduce ideas of abstraction that can lead you from geometry into algebra and trigonometry and into the higher mathematics and so on. So yeah, and I miss it. So this is Robert is, like I said, he pressured me until I finally caved in. So
well, it's so timely too, because everyone's creating their sacred space and their sanctuary right now. So everyone's like, including myself with my new property, we're all like diving into like, how do I raise the energy? How do I get it sacred? How do I bring all that in?
Yeah, well, I haven't had any opportunity to do objective testing of what happens when you incorporate these principles, but that would be like the next step. Although I do know that to the extent that I have been able to, because I've been a builder for 40 years, so whenever possible, I try to incorporate these principles of harmony. And it comes down to mathematical relationships between the part and the whole. That's the whole idea behind synergy, behind the gestalt. Is the idea that when you combine parts in a certain way there's something more that appears where the sum is greater than the parts. And in the ideas of sacred geometry, that sum is that's greater than the parts. That synergistic expression is the sense of harmony that's created. And many times people don't really consciously aware of it, but even in great art, and I bring in examples like that where I'll show some of the great architecture and art of the world, and after we've learned these principles through the drawings and so forth, then you'll begin to see, oh yes, I can see now, if you introduce that diagonal into this painting, I can see how these things are arranged around that. And then, for example, using the golden section, or the divine proportion as it's called, you can create a composition that's based, say, on a rectangle that's incorporates that particular ratio. And then what you realize is that as you construct the thing, there are sort of points of potency within that, where without realizing it, what you sort of unconsciously become aware of is that the composition is in a sense dynamic with respect to these key points. And those are usually the points that literally where you put the point of the compass to generate your drawing. And so if you can identify where those points are, and then in a sense, everything grows from those key dynamic points. So yeah, I'm going to have to do a little brushing up because I haven't done this in, like I said, 7 or 8 years. But I've got, like I said, we've developed this whole new generation of compasses. So I've got a box of 100 of them sitting out there. We just built a shop so that we can begin to create these forms and these shapes and everything like that in a smaller scale. And then ultimately what I'd like to do is figure out how to incorporate these principles into places of where people live, places, where people work, where people might pray or worship or meditate, because I think that the space you create can be conducive to inculcating a specific state of mind. So that's kind of what I'm up to now in my spare time. And
amen. We love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Beautiful.
Looking forward to it, actually.
Yeah. And I've been, fantasizing for a couple of decades now about, a school, the idea of a school where the infrastructure itself is like the textbook. And, I study astronomy, I study geology and engineering and how to put these things together. And, the whole idea of the Hermetic ideas, this linking of our world here below with the higher world, as above, so below, the linking in the really almost in the crudest sense, the linking of the terrestrial realm with the celestial realm, and being able to create something where the greater reality is somehow reflected into in ways that it becomes part of our daily life, even if we're not necessarily consciously aware of it. And so, in the studies that I've done out in the Puebloan area out there, like around using Chaco Canyon, and realizing how the whole infrastructure was laid out in the San Juan Basin to reflect the heavens. And the hub of it is at Chaco Canyon itself, but all of the road systems that extend radially outward from the hub and link all the outliers, are all astronomical lines translated down to the earth. So when the people are going about their daily business, they're, in a sense, they're recapitulating the movements of the heavens. Now, I don't know to what extent they were aware of the fact that they were doing that, but just the fact that they were doing that, to me, has really interesting implications.
Mm-hmm.
And how do we recapture some of that? Because, see, it wasn't an aberration like, oh, here's some idiosyncratic culture doing this really weird thing. It was all over the world, all through our history. People were, on some level or another, engaged in trying to create this confluence of these two worlds. So, and whether it's, it's an Egyptian temple or a Gothic cathedral, or even, a truncated pyramidal mound up in the Ohio River Valley, they were using the same template. Which raises some interesting questions, like, what was the origin of this template? Did it evolve independently in all of these different places and different times, or is there some common wellspring from which this knowledge arose? I don't know the answer to that, but that to me is one of the most interesting questions that comes out of these kinds of studies. And how did, for example, when, and this is get into specifics of it, for example, showing how the Parthenon is a manifestation of its unique place on the surface of the earth in terms of its measurement, and in manifesting, like if you look at the Parthenon, its facade is a perfect golden rectangle. And then we look over at the Great Pyramid and we see that relationship that's in the Parthenon of its width to its height, which is the so-called divine proportion. We look at the Great Pyramid and we see that the apothem to half of its base is also in that exact same proportion. And so there's a linking right there between the two. And the 51.85 degree angle of the capstones to the base of the pyramid, that's the key angle for the solution of the squaring of the circle. Coincidence? I don't know. But
hey, maybe there's one master geometry connecting this all that is yet to be discovered. The one master geometry.
Well, that might be the answer. And it could be, that because, when we talk about the golden section, we humans are the preeminent manifestation of that. Just your cubit right here. It divides this. If you feel, what's your name again?
Giselle.
Giselle with a G?
Giselle with a soft G. Giselle.
With a soft G. Giselle. I like that. Okay,
Yeah.
Giselle, feel on your wrist, and you'll feel that there's a space. On my wrist, it's right here. It's called the space of desktop, right there. Okay. Now, everybody varies a little bit, but that space divides your cubit, which is your forearm, elbow to fingertip, in the divine proportion, right there. So that the small unit stands in the same ratio to the large unit. So in other words, you've got your cubit from elbow to fingertip. You divide that cubit where that space is in your wrist, and you've created a harmonic proportion so that the small is to the large as the large is to the whole cubit. And then if you flip that up like this, and then you enlarge your cubit to your height, the space of desktop will be your navel. See?
Wow.
And you can look at your finger, and you'll see that if you look at the first digit right there, and then you look at from the tip of your finger to the first joint, and then you look from that first joint to this knuckle, then from this knuckle to this knuckle, and then from that to the space of desktop, and you're going to see that there's this harmonic progression that's all defined by the golden section relationship. And see, and then, yeah.
I was going to say quickly, is the divine proportion synonymous to the golden ratio? What is called the
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, that's all. I'm just curious.
Yeah.
Okay.
Two different terms for the same idea. And then if you make a fist and you look at this. This is a geometric exercise that we do. It's called whirling squares. And it's a series of squares that all are pivoting about that dynamic point.
Oh yeah, I can see it.
Mhm.
Wow, that's
Interesting.
cool. Hey, can I give y'all some trivia right now? Since we're talking about fingers,
Sure.
Galileo's finger is in a glass tube in a museum in Florence. Isn't that interesting? The bones of his
Say that
hands.
again. Whose finger?
Galileo's finger
Oh,
is in a museum and preserved in this glass thing, his hand and his fingers, in Florence, Italy.
okay.
That's a strange one.
I know, but it
That's a
made me
strange
think
one,
of that
yeah.
finger. Yeah, they saved his finger. Okay.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, like I mentioned, we're all, because we're organic. We're part of the natural world. There is the idealized template in the Platonic sense, the archetypes. Then there's the real world, and it's very much, I use the analogy from architecture. If I come with a set of blueprints, I'm looking at those blueprints, and the relationships, the dimensions on the blueprints might be exact. But when you go out and you measure the building, the measurement, the precision of the building is going to be a function of the level of craftsmanship of those who built it. Now, there's going to obviously be, even with the best craftsmen, there's a slight deviation between the idealized plan on paper and the actual three-dimensional manifestation of that plan. Likewise, with the vagaries of time and erosion and deterioration, it will further deviate from the idealized plan. However, by careful study and measurement, you can actually sort of, in a way, reverse engineer and extract from that what the original intentions of the architect would have been. So I kind of apply that same way of thinking to like looking at the Earth, looking at the solar system. I, in effect, in a sense, look at the whole solar system as a system of architecture. And we also look at how the arrangement of things is very delicate and very precise. And if you start tinkering with the arrangement, and I'm talking about the entire solar system acting almost as an organism. So if we start changing the parameters to any degree of significance at all, this possibility of life and consciousness that comes along with it just disappears. It goes away. In other words, we're the outcome of a very, very precise set of arrangements, which look, the mass of the sun, the mass of the earth, the distance between the two, the fact that the outer planets like Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune are spaced exactly as they are with their respective masses. Those things are very precision in effect, so that, for example, there's a major theory right now that life was initially seeded on Earth via comets. That the basic material, the raw material for life was cosmic in origin. Well, what I show is the studies that the whole arrangement of the solar system is such that it's set up for the delivery of comets to Earth. Right now, these comets are probably coming from this outer zone called the Kuiper disk. It's this great rotating mass of hundreds of billions of comets, whose origins is ultimately rather mysterious, but undoubtedly goes back to the original creation of the solar system itself. But what I'm trying to do is to show that through the geometry, we do exercises that show that there is, for example, the ratios and proportions built into the solar system can be found in ancient temples over and over again. And then the exercises, the drawing exercises we do, I could actually, if you gave me a second, I'll just show you a couple examples. And then I'm going to actually have to run because we've got a cameraman coming over at 2:00 to do some photography. But It's not a
I
huge.
I just want to compliment Robert and you on this subject because I keep saying this, but this is so timely. People want to bring this into their homes now. We want to have a knowledge so that we can operate these principles in our own homes. Everyone's at that point.
I think that's right. You know, because when I first started this studies in the 70s, and then there weren't very many sources of information on it. And then when I did my very first ever lecture in class, which was 1980, no one really knew what it was. You know, I had to pretty much say, well, this is what it is. This is what we're going to be doing. This is what we're going to be studying. And people had never really even heard of what is sacred geometry, what's sacred about geometry. And then everybody thinks of their, you know, boring middle school geometry class with, you know, endless proofs and definitions and axioms and all of that kind of stuff. So let's see here. I'll just share.
And we already know God is geometry, period.
Oh, yeah, that's. So let's see. Is this a good one here to pull up?
He reminds me of a Medici brother.
Yeah. We think you're a Medici brother.
What'd you say?
Okay, I read lineages, and the whole time I'm talking to you, yes, you were in all the metaphysical schools, Greece, everything, but predominantly the Renaissance. And Doc said that you look like one of the Medici brothers.
Well, I'll take that as a compliment.
Yeah,
it was meant to be. Yeah.
Well, yeah, you're super. That's probably your predominant because you have the arts of it, the arts of all the sciences. It's not just the sciences, and that's what the Renaissance brought out, the art of it.
Uh-huh. Cool. All right. So I'm going to do a share screen, and this will just give you a kind of an idea. Let's see. We'll do this.
Y'all are like Celtic Druid brothers.
I was a Viking.
No
We
doubt.
both were born in the South.
Can you see this,
Y'all
Robert?
have a lot.
Yeah.
Wow, look at this. This is amazing. That whole screen. Whoa. Let's see what we got.
Yeah, there's a lot going on here. This is, and then one of the other things I get into is how the same template is found in language. We got, for example, here's a wheel of time, and this is based upon the 12 signs of the zodiac and the changing astronomical months and how the sacred numbers are all reflected in that. And then I correlate earth change events with, for example, if I go to this one, here's a correlation between a whole series of earth change events and these sacred numbers.
Oh my
God.
God.
Not only manifesting in the temples and in the rituals, in the geometry of language, but also in the salient events of both human history and earth history. So
Wow. That's incredible. I've never seen that.
well, yeah.
I don't even know what the Heinrich event was.
The Heinrich event is, I'll explain it at some point.
Okay.
The Heinrich event very quickly is an event when, you know, the planet goes through a series of glacial and interglacial cycles and has been doing this for 2.5 million years, actually 2.6 million years, which is this number right here times 1,000 right there. That's sort of the framework. Geologists have identified this transition they call the Pliocene-Pleistocene boundary. It's right at 25,900 years old, right? And at that point, there was a major shift in the evolution of planet Earth. And one of the consequences of that was the Earth started going through this oscillating cycle. And the outward manifestation of this oscillating cycle is that the planet would go into an ice age, and then it would go into a glacial age, and then an interglacial age. And this has been the dominant climatic effect for the last 2.5 million years. It's what characterizes what's called the Pleistocene. But what I'm showing is that on whatever scale you look at, and this is the concept of scale invariance, is that whatever scale you're looking at, these same numbers show up over and over and over again. In a typical workshop, I don't know if we have, you know, I did a series of weekend workshops in North Carolina back in the early 2000s. And I did a 1 weekend a month 3 months on, 1 month off, and it took 2 years to go through my entire corpus of material.
Wow.
Wow.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
A lot.
And then, you know, I'll do things like this. I'll have ground plans of buildings.
Oh, Glastonbury. That's cool.
Yeah, yeah, and show the geometry, and then show how that is perfectly linked with the layout of Stonehenge and how that manifests this harmonic geometry that I'm talking about. And then let's see if hopefully I won't have to reshare the screen. And this is sort of the curriculum here.
That looks like.
Origin of.
Can you see this?
What's the slide 148, Randall? It's some kind of mound.
You're looking at the old. Okay, so I've got to stop share and reshare. I was gonna
I
slide
think so.
148. Okay, I can
Yeah.
tell you in a second. Slide 148. Yeah, that's at Glastonbury.
Oh,
Yeah, that's the
Oh, wow.
yeah.
The tour.
The tour. Thank you. The tour. Yeah. So I'm going to stop this share, and then I'm going to do another share screen. This one. So this is where we get into the geometry, and these are examples of the kind of drawing exercises that we do. Then I show things like, like for example, how Eratosthenes was able to determine the size of the earth and how anybody could determine the size of the earth if they could put a stick in the ground and travel 500 miles and put another stick in the ground, and then you could figure out how.
Wow.
So we go through all of this kind of stuff. Then I show how the Egyptians did it.
Get our brains activated.
I know.
This is good. We're gonna get all that turned on in there.
And then see, I say, by grasping the scale and extent of the earth, we are granted admission to the cosmic domain, as we shall see in due time. For now, appreciate the fact that the radius of the earth provides us with a cosmic yardstick. Through use of this measuring rod, the scale of the heavens becomes accessible. This knowledge provides the key to opening the windows of heaven and entering the kingdom of the gods.
Beautiful.
So I just start with, and I use this in the class to explain the geometric principles. And when you combine this with the drawings, a lot of people come in and said, I had no idea that I could understand geometry.
I wish I would have had you as my geometry teacher.
Me too.
You know
I didn't
what?
even have geometry.
I wish I would have had me as my geometry teacher too. The problem was, when I took geometry in 8th grade, I was just a dumb 14-year-old. But you know what? I loved geometry, even as a little kid. So then you can see.
I love the spirograph. Remember the spirograph?
Yeah,
What a great toy that is.
Mm-hmm.
I was obsessed with that.
Yeah. The hidden geometry in ancient metrology. Now, metrology is the system of measurement. So, so I bring in a lot of quotes.
That makes sense now.
If the measurement of the temple is in every way perfect, there will be perfection in the universe as well, from the Maya Mata, 22nd chapter, 92nd verse. This is an interesting idea because it introduces a key idea of sacred geometry, and that's reciprocity, that you can actually leverage things onto a much greater scale if you understand these principles of linkage, that there's this scale invariant phenomena that governs the whole universe. And so you would think it's the other way around, but the idea here, is that what you do on the small scale, it's kind of the idea, what's the concept called again? The butterfly effect?
Yes.
Right? Yeah, it's kind of that same idea. But so then I get into the units of measurement that were used to basically lay out the infrastructure of the ancient world. And then I show how these units of measurement that were used throughout history in various forms are actually also derived directly from that same template. And so I'll just show you real quick here to give you an idea. These were the 2 Egyptian units of measurement and that were used for Egyptian architecture. The royal cubit was used in the Great Pyramid, and they have a unique relationship in that. Let's see, right? This is the relationship between them. So one square Riemann and one square royal cubit. The royal cubit again was derived from the human anatomy, and then from there we can create a whole series of. I'm going to just jump through this really quick.
Pyramids.
And then we see ratios emerging that link all of these ancient units of measurement into a common system. Let's see, and then I've created what I call the master diagram. Let's see, we'll just go through real quick so you can kind of see the idea here. And it proceeds, and then it ultimately ends up linking, like here's in one diagram, the megalithic yard that was used to create the megalithic structures in England is linked with the Roman system of measurement that they inherited from earlier cultures. And then when you combine all of these, you get this particular diagram that I call the master diagram of sacred metrology. And this is the template that links all of the units of measurement of the ancient world. And our modern system that we use in America, based upon feet, yards, miles, and inches, is derivative from this. And that's one reason why I think it's important to preserve the traditional, as they're called, imperial units of measurement, like our mile, 5,280 feet, is based upon an ancient length of a pace of 5.28 feet, which is built right into the dimensions of Stonehenge, for example. The outer, if you think of the entire outer ring of Stonehenge, the Sarsen stones, it's 104.6 feet. So in other words, it's drawn on a circle whose radius is 52.8 feet, or 1/100th, exactly 1/100th of our imperial mile that we're still using.
Wow.
So there's a lot going on here that's really interesting that people don't know about. The numbers of, that we use every day, for example, right here. And then you see this. Let's go, where was it? Right there. Look, the Sumerian foot, 10.56 inches. Well, the increment separating the Sarsen stone circles in the Sarsen stone circle at Stonehenge is 10.56 feet. I'm sorry. Yeah, back up. Again, it's been 7 years. Okay, so I'm pulling this out of my memory from 7 years ago. But so the outer ring of Stonehenge is defined by a circle that's 105.6 feet, right? So you see right there, there's a connection between Stonehenge and the Sumerian units of measurement. And then that links into all of this. The diameter of the moon, the radius of the moon, the diameter of the sun, radius of the sun, diameter of the earth. And you see all of those numbers. 6,000 long Sumerian feet, 79,200 inches equals 6,600 feet, which is equal to 10 English furlongs. Furlong still exists today and is used in horse racing. But all of what I try to show is there's a common geometry that links all of these numbers. The units of measurement, the architecture, the ancient art, all of these things are linked together in this sort of this symphony and united by this template. And then we get into the idealized orbital periods of selected planets. And then we see that those numbers are built into the time cycles that govern our lives in ways that we don't even imagine. So this is linking space and time. It's linking the present with the past. It's linking what's above with what's below. And it's a system that has been basically lost, but gone through periods of rejuvenation and recovery from time to time. And then it gets lost again. I always liken it to like an underground river, a great underground river that's flowing, that from time to time surfaces, but then finds, an aperture and goes back underground for a while. Well, what I want to see is I want to just pull out the stops and bring this river out full on, and reconnect with these ideas and these principles. That's what I'm trying to do. And that's where my idea of a school comes in, because one of the models that has come down where this template is preserved in sort of in blueprint form is in the book of Revelations, where it talks about the holy city descending out of heaven, right?
Wow.
And it gives you very specific numbers and dimensions.
Where's that supposed to be? Is that the New Jerusalem they're saying that's outside of Sedona?
Well, I don't know for sure if it's outside of Sedona, but that's the holy city is yes, it's also called the New Jerusalem.
A lot of people say that it's right out, that it's like outside towards Prescott, that there's an area, and people have documented that and saying that is the New Jerusalem. I don't know.
I'd have to check that out.
Yeah, you should come check that out. That might be worth checking.
I am. I'm going to be spending more time out there for sure. So
good.
But yeah, so if you look at that particular template from that's been preserved in the book of Revelations, I guess my point is that it shows up in all of these various ways. So you've got sacred writings. If you look at the Rig Veda, which is part of the Vedic tradition, you find these numbers embedded in that. If you look at the reigns of the Sumerian kings, you find the numbers embedded in that. And then you see, here's the linkage. Look, 1 great year of the earth, which is its precessional cycle, is equal to 2,160 orbits of Jupiter around the sun, 864 Saturnian years, which is Saturn around the sun. And these numbers, again, are going to be found over and over and over again. If I go back to here.
I don't see anything about Venus in there. Where's Venus?
Oh,
is that an inner planet? Because you're talking about outer planets?
No, I'm talking all the planets. She's in here. Don't worry.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was a little worried.
I'll just show you one example of some Venus. We go.
Whoa.
These are a series of pentagons. You notice 5-sided, right? Okay, so from the pentagonal geometry, we're deriving, I want you to notice these 2 circles, the 2 red circles, and how they're linked by these nested pentagons. This was also the basis for a lot of the design, the mosaic patterns that you see on Islamic mosques, that precise.
Wow.
Okay.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
10-pointed. That was a 10-pointed medallion.
Yes. And then the pentagonal geometry and various ways that those manifest. So when let me move this down. We won't spend a lot of time with this other than I'll show you, here's the key relationships. You've got AD is the radius of the outer red circle, and AC is the radius of the inner red circle. And they are linked through this pentagonal geometry that I just showed you. Down at the bottom, and then I'm showing here AB equals CD, which is the radius of the small blue circles, right? BC equals F, which, where did F go? Okay, so anyways, right there is the golden section. So that's the your 1.618, the divine proportion.
Oh.
Okay, and then the radius of the circle enclosing the pentagram, AC, this inner red circle, that radius is equal to 2.618, which is F, the golden ratio, plus 1. So right there, the divine proportion is built right into this diagram. And this is just using the same geometry.
Amazing.
But now here's what I've done is I've abstracted just the 2 circles, right? Now, if we go back and we look at these are the ratios right here that I want you to remember. AD to AC. So AD is the radius of the large outer circle. AC is the radius of the inner red circle. That ratio, so here's their lengths, right? Which show the derivation of those is up here. The ratio of the two is 1.382, right? So whatever the radius of this inner red circle, that times 1.382 gives you the radius of the outer red circle. So now we're abstracting just those two circles. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip it down into a two-dimensional plane, but it's the same ratio. And remember the number. I'm going to go back one more time so you remember that. I don't want you to forget this number right here.
1.3.
Well, let's get a little more exact than that. Down here, 1.382.
Okay.
That's the ratio between those two circles, right? So now we're going to fold this down and watch what happens.
Whoa.
Huh.
That's amazing. Sun to Venus, sun to Venus,
Sun to
sun to
Earth,
Earth.
Sun to Venus.
That's those two circles.
Yeah. Oh my
And the
gosh.
sun is the point in the sun.
That's amazing. Wow. That's quite a extrapolation right there.
This is what I'm talking about. I'm saying that when I'm saying now that the template can be found embedded in the architecture of the solar system itself, this is just one really beautiful example involving the relationship between Earth, Venus, and the sun.
And that pentagram is a template of magic here on Earth and manifestation.
Yep. So.
Beautiful. That was awesome. Thank you for that journey.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, you're my,
Yeah.
I
Beautiful.
I love showing people this stuff.
Yeah, that kind of blew my mind right there. That's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
What planet number is Venus? Is it the third or the fourth planet out?
Third, where's the third?
Oh, wait, what are we? It's the second?
It's the second.
Okay, thanks. Oh yeah, I knew that.
She watched the show Third Rock from the Sun.
Earth is number 3.
Okay, Venus is number 2. But see, yeah,
I
lovers.
better come out there ahead of time when we do a remedial class.
There you go.
I'm down. I'm up for that.
Yeah, some of us are greenhorns. We could use the linguistics for sure. I know I could.
Yeah, hey, we all have our knowledge in special areas. How about that?
We do. It's true.
It's true.
We can't know everything.
No.
That's my goal, to know everything, but I'm not there yet. It's going to take me at least another week.
I think your goal is to teach everything.
No,
That's different.
there's a lot of things. Every day it's like, good Lord, I don't know anything yet. So much to know. I've got hundreds of lifetimes ahead of me, though, I guess. But maybe with Robert's help, I can go another 40 or 50 years.
Yeah.
I'll push you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
hell.
often thought, Jesus, what if we, you just kind of get to the point, where you figure things out. You're going, okay, I'm making sense of it all now. And then you realize, wait a second, I'm getting old. Why didn't I get to this, 40 years ago? But I guess you have to go through a few decades of being dumb and naive and make mistakes, and that's how you learn, right?
It's the journey.
Yeah. Well, I've made a few mistakes, but I've actually avoided some of the more serious mistakes I've seen some of my contemporaries make. Like,
That's good. What were those? Wait, I'm not supposed to ask any more questions.
We gotta stop.
I'm forbidden from questions.
No. No, I know that you need to get going, and
yes, I do.
Okay, to be continued.
Yeah, but that was just a little sneak. Now, what the stuff I showed you is really more than we'd be able to get into in one weekend. Really, the first one would be sort of introductory, because I really try to get people to really understand on a really basic level what's going on. I can show you, for example, as examples like the thing I just showed you, but if you have just spent several hours drawing that pattern, right? By drawing it, creating those pentagrams, right? And then taking one of these, I actually make people get one of these right here, because it's very simple to use, and you can, here's the number from the outer pentagon, plug that in. Here's the number from the inner one, divide, equals, and there's your magic number, shows right up there in your readout display, right? So I have people have one of these, a drawing pad, they will draw. So you won't see what I just showed you, the animation I just showed you, showing the Earth, Venus, Sun relationship, until you've made those drawings, you see. And that's what puts it in here.
The visceral.
The visceral. That's exactly right. Yeah, that's it. So, on that note, yes. Robert,
I'm sending you a geometry.
Yeah.
Did you get it?
Yeah. Oh, that's what that was.
It's all looking pretty exciting, Randall. Looking very exciting.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
It is. Okay.
Oh, you got to go. Okay, beautiful. Signing off with Sacred Seal Geometry.
I like it. All right. See you guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
James.
See you,
Bye-bye.
Randall.